everyone. Great to be here and having another chat with Fabian. Enjoy talking to Fabian.
Okay, and also everyone feel free to share where you're tuning in from on the chats and on LinkedIn and YouTube, wherever you're from. Would love to hear from you. Okay, so we are going to be discussing evidence collection and the audit journey, and also the crucial role of effective evidence collection for audit success. And we're going to be, of course, discussing the joint impact of audit expertise and technology. And of course, Karthik will also dive a little bit into the technical capabilities of Sprinto in and how it aids to this philosophy. All right, over to you, Fabian.
Thanks, Arti. Yeah, I'm really excited to show some insights about how audits are done, what's important from a point of view of auditors, and how we can simplify that and create a more efficient audit journey. So let's start with the first topic. How are audits done? We need to understand how audits are conducted to get the pain points, the challenges, and also the most important areas. That's why I want to just quickly go through the regular process of audits, no matter if we talk about external audits, like a real certification audit for ISO 27001, or if we talk about internal audits, which are a mandatory topic, a mandatory clause in the ISO. That means you have to do your own internal audits, but they should be independent. Towards the independency, I will give some more insights later. But first of all, how does the process look? So if you want to be audited or you schedule an audit, first of all, you usually have the audit planning. The audit planning is about when do we do the audit, who should be involved in the audit, what are possible time slots. You also exchange information with the auditor in advance. For example, organizational chart, some high-level policies, even some core processes, and some basic information that the auditor needs to be able to plan the audit properly. And for that, it's really important to know the respective stakeholders and the roles in your company, as well as the complexity of the company and what you're actually doing. Because the size of an audit, for especially external audits, also depends on a lot of different factors. For example, employee count. Then you schedule the audit. You have to usually approve the audit planning. You get it sent over, different format, but usually you just see who is involved, what are the time slots, what are the topics. You can change. For example, if somebody is not available, you can request a change for the respective slot, and then you schedule the audit, you invite the respective people, and you also educate them a little bit, at least you should, on what is important for the audit and how does it work. Then the audit is executed. That means the auditor comes on site or starts the audit remote. Usually that starts with the opening meeting. In the opening meeting, you usually have the management and some important stakeholders, for example, the information security officer or the CISO, and the auditor explains the procedure, tries to get a better understanding of the company. You show how your business works, and then you dive into the first real task of the audit. The audit is conducted as it was planned, and in the end, you usually have a closing meeting, can be the same day or can be another day, where we just go through the highlights of the audit, the weaknesses and non-conformities of the company, but there should also be an explanation of the strengths of the company, because it's important to not only show what's wrong, but also what's going good, and to a little bit motivate the people to keep the ISMS in an improving way. Lastly, you get a report, and then you can decide on the next steps. Reports are sent out or provided with a platform. That depends a little bit on how you do the audit. And the next steps is really important because you get some non-conformities and improvements, and you have to create tickets for them, for example, at least track them, find out the root cause for them, and then work towards an improvement. That's it for the conduction of the audit, and we can skip to the next one. Pain points of an audit. So you now know the process of an audit, and what usually happens if you do it in a, let's say, a little bit more old school way, not all information is available. So we often have inconsistent data formats. we have a lot of efforts in providing all that information if it's not stored in a central location, if it's derived from different places, etc. And the verification of the evidences can also be hard if they are not stored in a central location. For example, oh, we need to check some logs here, we need to check this or that system. That can be additional effort. Usually it's done with interviews or screen sharing or on-site, depends on how you do the audit. Especially if you try the kind of manual collection of information, human error can be a really big bottleneck or pain. And I've seen that multiple times. We create some findings and later on we find out, oh, we got the wrong report provided, for example, because the people didn't get the updated information or the most current information. And what's also not possible is to analyze trends properly if you don't have the trends in a system, in a central system. You don't see continuous data that's somehow connected to trend analysis and a lot more. Here I just want to show you why it can be beneficial to do audits a little bit different, and that's what we will dive into later on. Now we want to share some basic auditor questions that you also know what is an auditor looking for and what is an auditor talking about. I will not explain all of these questions. You will receive the slides later on, but I just want to highlight two things that can be important for you. So for example, one of the basic questions can be, who is responsible for security in your company? You should know the information security manager, CISO, or however you call this person or role in your company. On the next slide, we have a few more questions for you. Also very interesting here, some basic questions, for example, if the auditor is not only checking information in a system, but he's really conducting interviews with employees, like sample interviews and picking out some random employees, then one question can be, where do you store your passwords? And if you have a central password manager and you store them in your browser, you know what happens. It will be stated out as a non-conformity and there will be a discussion. But here we just want to show you some live examples on what's important and what questions can come up. And now on the next slide, we really want to give you some information about the important phases of an audit, especially the pre and post phase. And as we already discussed, and as I already explained a little bit, there are some documents needed for that audit. And evidence collection is a really important topic over the whole audit section. You exchange information in front of the audit, and you also exchange information after the audit for the reporting, etc. That's why we want to show you some information about what an auditor looks for. An auditor will check your documentation. That means the auditor will check policies, he will check guidelines, he will check processes, but he will also conduct interviews to see if what is written down is really in place. Do people understand where they get their information? Did they understand the content of the information and can they apply it? And testing and observations is one of these points. So there will be sample tests, for example, checking the firewall configuration, checking other system configurations like cloud configurations, etc. if the systems are configured as defined in your hardening guidelines or policies. And then an auditor will collect evidences. But if you provide evidences in advance, the whole process will be a little bit smoother. For example, how many people have received an awareness training? What is the average output of the awareness training? Do the people understand what they are doing? Have they answered the questions correctly? And if not, did they have any follow-up measures? And in the end, also feedback and reporting is a big point of what auditors look for, not only providing feedback to the company, but also if you have an internal feedback culture, for example, management review is an important topic of the ISO, where you should explain to the management, how is your information security system going? What are the KPIs? What are the trends? What are the biggest challenges? And improvements. And from here on, I want to hand over to Kartik, because he will explain a little bit more the technical view on the audits and how you can solve these challenges.
All right. Thank you so much, Fabian, for that fantastic introduction. I think so far we saw about the process of the audit itself and the typical pain points. And I thought it's a good time to talk about how technology can solve some of these pain points and make the entire audit process or even the evidence collection process easier for all of us. So technology itself has evolved over the years, right? So the GRC platforms have existed, a decade or two ago. Let me call them the older generation of GRC platforms. And now we see, I'll call them the new age GRC automation or hyper automation platforms that are available today. Some of the problems that exist in audits or in the process of evidence collection could be solved by the older school or older generation of GRC products as well. I'll talk about a couple of those examples. But we'll quickly see that there's a point in time where the older generation of GRC products could not keep up pace, and there are a lot of problems that could not be solved by the older generation of GRC products, which is where the new age or the hyper automation platforms take over. So without further ado, let me start with the first one, which I think is a fairly basic requirement of a technology that we would all expect, is essentially reusability of control testing and evidence collection. Right. I think many of the older school or the first generation of GRC platforms also had a way for control testing or evidence to be shared across audits, essentially by establishing a common control framework. There could have been a few that didn't do this, but this was a capability that was available earlier as well, and of course it's a capability that carries on to the newer age products or the solutions as well. This is especially useful if audits are across frameworks. As we're all aware, there are going to be controls that are that overlap across a SOC 2 or an ISO or a PCI, and we don't want our teams to perform rework when it comes to collection of evidence or even testing of controls. So that's I think the first major advantage that technology provides. And Arti, if you could, I just had a couple of screenshots of how, like, just to make this a little more real. I don't know how easy it is to see the text on the screen, but essentially there are controls which belong to multiple frameworks or which map to multiple frameworks. And I think the especially painful ones to gather evidence for would be the ones that where we have a dependency on other teams, right? And this is what we have seen by working with our customers as well, where the information security team is reliant on people operations or infra operations team to gather the evidence for certain controls. And if you have audits every 3 months, because you have a SOC 2 audit and an ISO and a PCI a little while later in the year, you find that you need to keep going back to the same team for more and more samples, and that's when it can get really painful. And essentially having reusability of controls and reusability of evidence across audits is super beneficial in cases like that. So moving on to the next one, a second benefit that technology can provide is essentially planning for audits upfront. Again, I think some of the older school GRC platforms provided this functionality as well, but maybe not all of them. And again, I would think for anyone looking at a technology solution for automating the evidence collection and automating or making the entire audit process simpler in today's day and age, I would think that this is a basic feature that we should all look for. So essentially, planning for audits upfront, is essentially about setting internal deadlines, sharing work with the team. So compliance is a team game. Every audit requires a bunch of people to be working in cohesion and ensuring that everything gets done well ahead of time. And not only that, as someone who is responsible for the information security posture and ensuring that the audit is successful, having a clear visibility on our own readiness for the audit, right? And very often we've seen customers prior to using technology solutions getting stressed out because there is an audit, and sleepless nights are very common, right? I'm sure Fabian would have had his own share of experience with that. I'm sure you can share some stories, but this again, I think a simple problem that can be solved with technology solutions. And if you could, share the screenshots, Aarti, just to make it a little real. We can essentially plan for our audits up front. You can set the dates for when that audit period would end, and all the activities that need to be done before the audit commences are listed down, and even the timelines for when those activities need to be completed are managed by systems nowadays. So the system will tell you how many of these have have missed the deadline, how many of these tasks are close to the deadline, how many of these are done, which means you're essentially ready. And overall, you get like a single bird's eye view of your readiness for the audit. Fabian, I'd invite you to share any horror stories or anecdotes you have on this topic.
Yeah, a lot. I cannot share all of them, but what we often see here is we call it the audit program. If we talk about a program over a span of 1 year, 3 years, or even 5 years. For example, if you have different audits per quarter, as you said, the ISO audit, the SOC audit, sometimes just audit with a smaller scope, like a surveillance audit. And this audit program is often created in huge Excel tables, and then people try to create more columns for, what clauses or controls will be checked in this audit, because the whole program includes the different audits, but also who is needed for the audit, what kind of information is needed, etc. And that's a super manual way. That document is never really up to date. And with a technology solution, you can have all information in one place. People get automatic reminders. They can get an email. They know what information needs to be provided. And especially if the audits are not full scope, it's super helpful to understand, what evidences are already in the system, or what do I need to provide in a manual way. So it's a really, really great topic to automate these tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've also heard stories of, some of the larger companies having regular operations different from audit operations, because it's too stressful to do, have audit operations all the time. And, you don't want to operate the same way throughout the year. And I think, technology solutions provide a solution to all of that. You can essentially be audit ready all the time. And I'm going to share a couple of other examples of how technology makes it super easy. So if you could go to the next slide here, Aarti. This one's about, again, I think some of the earlier generation GRC platforms probably had this feature as well, but I think most of them that I'm aware of don't. But again, a basic feature that you would expect in a platform that you would look for today is having seamless communication with auditors, right? We've seen auditors also have a lot of work of, I think, firstly gathering evidence and then testing evidence across maybe dozens or sometimes hundreds of controls, and it can get pretty difficult to manage communication over email or phone calls or Dropbox or SharePoint folders. So all of this becomes a little bit of a mess to manage internally. So having some kind of a seamless communication with auditors where the communication is very contextual, right? For which control are you looking for this evidence, and what is it that you're looking for which the evidence doesn't already provide, right? Having this kind of a clear visibility actually provides the capability to have multiple conversations in parallel, even if, let's say, from the auditors team there are multiple individuals conducting the audit for different sections. It makes it super easy for technology to solve problems like this one. So if you could click on the next on the images there, Aarti, just to make this a little real. I think we took a real screenshot from some of the audits that were done on the platform, and you can essentially see that there's communication of auditors asking for some questions for two different controls at the same time, and it's easy to know like why you're asking what you're asking. And right within within the platform, you provide a response. The auditor says, "Okay, that's great. This question is resolved," and you're all set, right? So, yeah.
I have seen it this week in an external audit. A lot of emails going out. Oh, can you provide this document? And then 5 minutes later, oh, I also need this document. And what is the context for this information? And the problem is, it's completely spread over multiple people. Everybody is in CC, and sometimes even some people in parallel try to answer, and then the auditor gets 2 answers because nobody saw, oh, the email has already been answered. Maybe the answers are already also different. So that's a real challenge. And if you have a live chat in a system, okay, it could be done with Teams or Google Meet, however, but here we also have all the information in one place, and we also have status. Is it ready for review or not? What happened? Is the checkbox green? And I think that's also super valuable and helpful for me as an auditor, but also for me as a CISO if I manage the audit from the company side.
Absolutely, and I think when we think about solutions like a chat bot or some kind of a communication mechanism like this one, in isolation, it seems like a very basic technology, right? But the older generation GRC platforms, I don't think thought about this being a basic need, and I think the newer generation platforms have thought about it, and I think today it's become like a core feature for most platforms, and I think we should look for this being one of the things that that's important, in order to manage audits easily for our own internal business. So moving on to the next one. So the next one is again a very interesting one. I think Fabian touched upon this one when he spoke about auditors. The common gripe that auditors have is, hey, 95% of the time that we spend is just collecting data, and 5% of the time is the real audit, right? So I think those are the problems that the new age tools have completely solved for us, and I think this is where the older generation of tools are unable to make this leap, and this becomes I think a core distinguishing factor of the new generation hyperautomation platforms. So there's continuous testing of the controls. There's real-time alerts. I think Fabian touched upon this one as well. So when there is a gap in your compliance posture, the right people get alerted at the right time. You have a single dashboard of visibility of the various statuses of various tasks. So essentially, our teams are always audit ready, and audits don't become those stressful events that we have to go through. But you welcome audits at any time of the year, and that's what some of our customers have seen by adopting tools like Sprinto, is that audits become just those recurring milestones, and not the real deal that that was a nightmare in the past. So I think this is one, and I think Fabian, you also spoke about having that the trends, seeing the trends of your readiness over time. Again, with technological solutions and the new age hyperautomation platforms, you get to see not just your current status of compliance, but how your readiness changed over time, and was there a dip in your compliance posture at any point in time, and what was the reason for that dip? I think all of those insights become much easier for us to gather by using technological solutions. So I think this is another major benefit, which nicely dovetails into the next one, which is while on one side there is continuous testing of the controls and alerts when there are gaps in the compliance. On the other side, there is also the continuous collection of evidence, right? Which again does away with the need for giving auditors access to logs and screenshots and so on. With API integrations now, all of this data is available, and luckily storage of data is not very expensive in today's day and age. So essentially, tools are able to provide historical data of a certain performance of a control. Right. So here we can see an example of a set of servers and what the status of those servers were, and you can see that there is you can go back in time. So auditors can actually go back in time and see, okay, what was the status of this particular control 1 month ago or 6 months ago, and this doesn't require any further screenshots or access to logs and back and forth between auditors and internal teams. All of this is readily available within the platform, and again, this makes it so much more easier for both both businesses as well as auditors to just focus on what they do best. So I think that's another beautiful advantage of the hyperautomation platforms. So Fabian, curious to hear.
One point I want to add to this slide and also the slide before, when you said audits can be done in a smoother way because you don't need to collect all the information. You always have it. You always have it continuously and in time. So it can happen that you don't plan an audit, but it needs to be conducted. For example, if a customer asks for an audit because they are allowed to per contract, and maybe in the contract there is a definition that the customer is allowed to come within 14 days for a random audit. And then people go crazy. They need to block the resources. They need to get all the information. Oh, something's not up to date. They need to change it. And here you have all that information in one system, and you have peace of mind because you know we're always ready. Yeah. And for sure, there can be maybe some vulnerabilities, or you never have 100%. It's a continuous improvement process. But then at least you see the trend. Is it just one or two signs going red and people are already working on it and starting the improvement phase? Or has it been like that the whole year, going up and down? And that's also a motivation for the team to not create this, I don't know if that's the correct wording, point in time compliance or security for that one day per year, but really to work on it continuously. And then everybody's always ready. So that's what I want to add here.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point of, I think organizations in the past typically work towards, audit being like the, like what everybody worked towards for the entire year. But now I think with evolution of tools, audit just becomes, just another milestone, and it can happen at any time. And in fact, just to add to what Fabian mentioned, we've seen some of our customers actually lead with security and compliance, especially in some of the regulated industries. Today, I mean, this feature is not covered in the conversation today, but essentially, customers can actually, or users of platforms like these can actually share a real-time compliance posture with their potential customers or existing customers. It's a feature called the Trust Center, which is also available on Sprinto. But essentially, that gives immense confidence to your customers and anyone evaluating you that okay, this is a team that is supremely confident of their security and compliance posture, right? And I think it's tools like this that give businesses the confidence that I'm okay for my customers to look at my security posture anytime. And I'm confident that I'll always have a good posture. And sure, there'll always be the cases when there is that odd control that doesn't perform. But I think your customers are also aware that it's almost impossible to maintain 100% all the time. But there is a real-time visibility, and when I have a question of why something didn't perform, there's always a way to provide that response to our prospects. So I think it's changing the way like business is conducted. I think eventually technology, I think, it can completely change the way or improve overall digital commerce is how I think of it. If all of this back and forth of like how do I evaluate my vendors is eased out.
Actually, Karthik, I just wanted to quickly highlight a question for both of you that came from John. He wanted to know about I'm just going to cast the question live. Yeah, automated audits. It would be better if you can explain how this works considering security challenges. How exactly will the audits be conducted, and how will you interact with our infra and ensure the access controls are fulfilled?
Got it. So I'll take that, Fabian, and you can add if you have anything else. So essentially, John, so given that tools like the hyper automation platforms that I'm talking about, the new age GRC automation tools, the backbone of these tools are essentially integrations with various internal service providers that businesses use. So for example, we would integrate with your infrastructure provider, the email service provider, the version control system, project management tools, and so on. And it's through these APIs that there's obviously a way to restrict access. It's through these APIs that we are able to fetch the appropriate information that not only tests controls, but also collects evidence for auditors in a manner that auditors care for, right? Which is what we saw in I think the slide that's available right now. So consequently, once this auditor dashboard, and we'll see that in the next slide, once this auditor dashboard is shared with the auditors, they have everything they need in one place. And more often than not, we find that once this evidence dashboard is shared with our auditors, the number of questions that they have back for the team in terms of missing evidence, etc., you can count it on one hand. So essentially, the audit itself becomes a little bit of a hassle-free or a stress-free activity. It's more like a chat conversation, and you're done with providing the answers that the auditor is looking for. So I hope that how do you ensure access controls are fulfilled? I think it's the same. It's through the integration with your infrastructure providers that we're able to understand who has access. And by the way, there's also an integration with the HRMS providers, which tells us the role of each user. And we can map the roles of the user to the access levels that are available in the infrastructure provider or any other platform. I hope that answers your question, John. And Fabian, happy to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for me as an auditor, it makes my life easier because I can focus on the important parts and not on asking for the evidence and trying to find where is this information located, because I have everything in one central pane of glass. And I can just use my brain power for the real audit and for the complicated tasks. And I think that's also super important.
Absolutely. So I think if we go to the next slide, Aarti, I think this specifically yes, it's the one that I think John was also referring to. So another advantage of using technology platforms is having dedicated auditor dashboards. And I think in a previous slide we saw how business-facing dashboard would look like, essentially listing down the tasks for each of the business users, your people operations team, maybe your infra operations team, and so on. And what your business teams care about and what they would understand would be very different from what your auditors care about and what they would understand. And having different dashboards which cater to the unique needs of each persona, I think again becomes a fairly basic requirement in today's day and age. And that makes it super easy for the auditors to finish their activity as well. So essentially, again, platforms today have what is called like an evidence dashboard, and you can see an example of this one. So you see that there are a number of controls, and I think it's all segregated based on the framework of choice, and each of these controls has the evidence right against it. So this could be the policy document, this could be the evidence that is gathered through the APIs, which I showed in the previous slide. Like all of this is available in one place for the auditor. So like Fabian was mentioning, the auditors can essentially focus on what they do best, which is essentially testing of the controls and ensuring that you have a strong compliance posture. And the amount of time spent in gathering of the evidence and back and forth of documents itself is we do away with that altogether. I think that's a massive advantage of technological tools. And in the interest of time, I wanted to cover the last two a little quickly, but again, I thought fairly important considerations in a technology solution. There is a massive amount of internal collaboration or team management that's required in any journey, right? And especially because compliance is a team game. There are a bunch of requirements that come in through audits, and this could be internal audits or external audits. And those requirements from the audits or the feedback from the audits needs to be taken care of by the internal teams. And this essentially requires tasks to be created internally, and those tasks to be monitored to completion. Again, creating, assigning, and monitoring of those tasks are easily done using the new age GRC automation tools. Again, this is a fairly basic feature, so don't want to spend too much time on that one. And the last interesting one was, this is especially true for some of the larger organizations where blanket rules don't apply across the entire org. So you might have a business unit in Europe and another business unit in, let's say, the Americas, and the controls might be different. The frequency of testing, it might be different. The ownership of those controls and ownership of who is performing the risk assessment could be different. And as an organization, you might want to enforce a certain number of core controls across both business units, while providing the flexibility for those units to add their own controls as they deem necessary. Now, when it comes to the audits, having this kind of flexibility at when sharing evidence to the auditor is also supremely important. Otherwise, I think the amount of time that your auditors would spend just trying to understand the context and look at the data across these organizations could itself, we've seen examples of this itself going into months. But technology tools provide this is a basic feature for, I think, hyper automation platforms of today's day and age, and they provide a single pane of glass visibility, across multiple business units. So that covers I would say the core features. And as a bonus slide, I included one, and I think today there is no conversation about technology that can be considered complete without talking a little bit about AI. But I think this is a conversation, this is a topic that deserves its own webinar. So maybe we'll dive into the detail the next time. I see Fabian nodding his head in excitement and I'm sure he's looking forward to that one as well. But essentially the point that I want to convey here is that technology is bound to impact how audits are conducted today. We're already seeing some early signs of how efficiency is improved in the data collection and the communication pieces, and just internally having the confidence that you're always ready for an audit. But the next few years, I think the manner in which audits are conducted and itself is likely to change. And just as an experiment, before this webinar, I posted this question to a free version of ChatGPT that I had, sort of not even a paid version. So I asked this question of, hey, I'm a CISO of a technology company. I'm preparing for IPO. I have, this is the kind of business that I run, and I invited ChatGPT to play the role of an information security consultant, right, and provide me a list of risks, and rank those risks, provide me mitigating controls for those risks, and I think the response was fairly long, so I couldn't provide it all on a slide, but it was a fairly detailed starting point. I think for most organizations looking to establish a baseline, I think the technology and AI will essentially come in and provide this kind of the advantage here. So I think there's going to be a lot of changes of how how compliance is ensured within companies and how audits are conducted in the years to come. And I'm excited to see how this all unfolds. With that, I guess back to Fabian for the closing.
Yeah. So what I see here is what I always see on LinkedIn. When people complain about AI will not solve the problem, AI will not exchange me, technology will not solve the problem, or even compliance does not guarantee security. Yes, all of these statements might be correct, but in the end, why do we complain or discuss this? Like, we should jointly work on improving as a team. And that's why we should leverage technology, we should leverage AI, and we should see compliance as an enabler for security and not say, oh, we have so much paperwork. Yeah, if you do it in the wrong way, for sure. And there might be some tasks that are not your favorite tasks, and some things might be there just for the paperwork. But in the end, you often decide how to understand these more generalized requirements and what to do with them. And I think that's the most important factor here. An audit can, I would say, never be done completely with the technology, like fully automated, because we need to understand the business, we need to talk to some people, we need to see what is happening outside of the technology world. Even if it's a SaaS company with complete remote work, there might be some cases where we just need to have a discussion. And maybe I want to check the screen of the employee to see what kind of browser is he using, what's the workflow, what data, what information is on the desktop, and what tools is this person using. So it's always collaborative, and it's always with the goal to improve and get better with our complete security and compliance strategy. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen that with several of our larger customers as well. And so technology is an enabler. I think the amount of heavy lifting that technology can do will keep increasing with time. And I think a lot of like what was considered as grunt work or repetitive work can easily be solved through technology. AI especially has I think a much larger impact in terms of taking on some of the repetitive tasks that even an information security consultant would do. But I would also think that that the best solution would be a combination of having that the human expertise combined with technological expertise. And at the end of the day, I don't think like any tool can take the responsibility of ensuring that a company is secure, right? A tool can enable in that decision-making process, but it has to be a person, actually ensuring that a company is secure and risk-free. So I think the right answer is always going to be a combination.
Great.
Yeah, with that, thank you, Fabian and Karthik. I'm just gonna pull up the questions. We have quite a few of them. All right, let me just start it off. How can organizations measure the ROI of their successful GRC and audit process? Fabian, do you wanna?
Yeah,
give?
that's a hard one, because I would always say it depends on the organization. So if we don't know what kind of business you're doing and what field you're in, it's really hard to say where do you have the biggest ROI, and is your GRC strategy or security strategy successful. And measuring the ROI of an audit, I would say if you go the ISO way because you have to create some kind of assurance and to show or to get into contracts with enterprise customers, for example, I would say that's your ROI. So what kind of customers can you acquire now because you have the certification and because you conduct the audits and because you stay certified, if you mean that. But anything else is really a little bit more dependent of the business itself, I would say. Any adds, Karthik?
Yes. Firstly, I think this is also like a large topic that deserves its own, I think, separate conversation. So, Arti, I think something for you to consider for a future webinar. But I think this is a very, very pertinent topic for GRC leaders. I think proving ROI is a hard problem, but unless that problem is solved, investment in this direction is always going to be looked at more times than it should. And I think we're working towards building a framework that can actually help with proving the ROI as GRC leaders. And again, like I said, it's a longer topic, but just to give you like a sneak peek of one of the ways that ROI could be shown to our management is when working with the revenue teams. Right. So thinking about how GRC can become a revenue enabler, right? So how much addressable market can we unlock with compliance? How much new revenue or how much renewals do we enable with compliance? How can we make GRC like an asset that generates leads, right? And I spoke about how businesses are leading with security and even establishing their security posture on their website and using that as a lead generation magnet. And how much liability do we help mitigate? And there are certain tips and techniques that can be implemented as early as tomorrow. And these aren't futuristic ideas and so on. But I think some of these are just to give it a sneak peek of how it's possible. But like I mentioned, I think it's a topic that deserves its own hour of conversation. So maybe we'll continue the conversation some other day.
Okay, yes, we will. I'm sure there's going to be another webinar where we dive deep into this, and I'll definitely send you an invite. All right, so the next question is from Michelle. Would the third-party auditor then be given access to the systems to review within the tool?
As an auditor, I would be happy to get access. In the end, the customer decides, but the tool has the capability. So that means, yes, if you want the auditor to have access to the system, for sure, and that makes everything easier for you if you share the whole information out of one platform.
Yes, and like I mentioned, there are two, at least with Sprinto and I think several other hyper automation platforms. There is a dashboard that is designed for internal teams, the business teams that need to complete their activities to ensure compliance. And there's a separate dashboard for auditors to look at the evidence and complete their audits. So I think, by default, we find our customers providing access to the auditor dashboard to all of their auditors, whereas, of course, the capability exists to provide auditors access to the view that the business teams have as well. But whenever the auditors request for it, it's something that our customers decide on a case-to-case basis.
Michelle, I hope that answered your question. Feel free to ask any follow-ups. We are also linking socials for both Karthik and Fabian here in case you'd like to reach out to them and take this up one-on-one. Sunil asks, is there a way to support enterprise risk and compliance management using the platform?
100%, because what you do is you steer these processes with the platform and you provide complete frameworks for that. So if you have a feature for the risk management or even for the vendor management, then you can do these evaluations in the platform. You can invite other colleagues to jointly collaborate on these risks, create risk treatments plans, and also re-evaluate the risks in like intervals or quarterly, daily, whatever you want to choose. And also, if you talk about compliance management as a whole, the platform helps you to build the complete ISMS from the policy and process section towards the asset management, towards technology controls. We have seen the monitoring of security controls of cloud providers through integrations. So in the end, you have everything you need, the whole toolbox in one panel. And you just need to use it, invite the respective people, internal and external ones, as we have seen, and then you streamline the process and you are much faster with the really important work and not thinking of where's my documentation platform, how do I create my policies.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I think that was Fabian answered as best as anyone could.
Yeah, we have one more question to answer, but before that, Fabian, do you just want to quickly talk about PCGA and how you guys are helping out with audits?
I'm happy to talk about that. So in general, PCG is much bigger and we have a lot of different business units and doing a lot of stuff in the cloud. But if we especially talk about the audit services, we conduct independent gap assessments to just get an understanding of where am I at with my security strategy. For example, if we look at a framework like ISO, but also TISAX for automotive, SOC 2, etc. And with these gap assessments, we then create a roadmap for the implementation project and work with tools like Sprinto. Or we do internal audits because a requirement is that internal audits are done from independent parties. And if your company has 50 employees, maybe even 100 employees, you give that task to somebody in your company, it's never really independent. Independent would be a separate location, a staff department, only doing audits, having that revision role, etc. So we help out to conduct the internal audits in a really compliant way, creating report and creating improvement plans. I also added the process here. You can just check the link if you're interested. And I think what's really important for us is we don't do only the audit. We are from a technology side. We are all IT experts, developers. We have been in CISO roles. All of our security consultants and experts are from the field. And we don't only look at it from a process perspective. We really try to enable the business. I'm founder myself, and we really want to give recommendations that help you to build a security strategy that fits to your company's needs, because otherwise you just create a policy structure and you don't get any benefits out of that. Thanks.
Thank you. As we have already linked Fabian's socials in case you want to reach out to him and chat more about PCG. We have one last question before we are done with the session. I think it's a follow. I think Karthik, this is for you. If would security be better if you could? I mean, it would be clear if you can clarify whether this would be done end to end by Sprinto or if there would be any dependency on third-party systems.
Right. So I think security, there are various aspects to security, and I don't think Sprinto can or any automation, GRC automation platform can solve for all aspects of security and resolving or finding and resolving vulnerabilities. I think there are other tools that will also be crucial in your journey to improving the security posture of your company. Sprinto would have, or any tools in this space would have some default functionality, but the core, like I mentioned, is going to be integrations with a lot of other providers, which include vulnerability management systems, incident management systems, and threat detection systems. I think some investment in that direction would also be required for companies who are looking to go beyond the baseline and establish a strong compliance posture.
Okay, thank you so much. We did want to do something fun, but unfortunately we are out of time. So what I'll do is I'll be sharing the slides with all of you. You can play the fun segment on your own with your own team. It's all about rating threats. And you can just tag us when you're done, when you can share the results on social. Thank you so much for taking the time to join, and we hope that you were able to take something away from this that you didn't know before, and we hope this was a helpful session for all of you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.